Hello there. If you have gone through any sort of marketing training whatsoever, one of the first things that they'll ask you is, what is your ideal avatar? And my question is, what is the definition of an ideal avatar? Well, first of all, I do want to clarify, I'm not talking about the cartoon version of you on Facebook. I'm talking about your ideal client. If you were to sit down and write out all of the characteristics and qualities of who you would consider your ideal client. That's your ideal avatar. The problem is, what we would define as our ideal avatar might always be changing. And I know that there's a lot of resistance around the concept of niching down to just one specific avatar. I know because I myself, I'm one of those people who was very reluctant. And here's why. Throughout my journey as an entrepreneur, my ideal avatar has changed significantly. So let's go back to when I was in my career for 18 years. I was working with luxury real estate agents and luxury home service providers, as well as a publisher, which was my boss. So those were my clients, those were the people that I was serving. And even though I have a lot of experience with these categories, during that experience, I've found that a lot of luxury real estate agents were very particular, finicky, hard to please. And I'm sorry if you're a luxury real estate agent and this offends you. You might not be one of those people. Maybe this is just a certain percentage. And maybe this is just a certain percentage of any classification of a business professional. Maybe this is just unavoidable. But at the time, I was naive and I thought to myself, well, the luxury niche is just so hard to please. I'm going to go after uh, kind of like the lower end, I guess you could say. And one of my first types of clients was um, mompreneurs. And I figured I can relate to mompreneurs because I myself am a mompreneur. So who better to serve than people that I know inside and out, right? So there was a couple of problems with this. For one thing, a lot of mompreneurs are just dabbling. They're maybe they're an entrepreneur, but it's a side hustle. Maybe it's a hobby. Maybe they're just dabbling. They're not taking their business seriously, and so they're not willing to invest a lot of money into it. Or maybe because they're just starting out and they're floundering, they're struggling, maybe they don't know what they're doing, then they're not very successful. And because there's no success behind what they're doing, they have very little to invest in their business. The third thing that was the clincher for me was during one of my event campaigns, I decided to launch some Facebook ads. And Facebook does not like you to niche down to only mompreneurs and only women. They found this to be against the rules, and my ads didn't run. So my initial thought there was, I am not going to have my ideal avatar be something that I can't even promote to or advertise to on Facebook. So that was one of my earlier experiences. And so I was like, well, let's move into a different type of avatar. And I floundered quite a bit. I was starting to just go after the people that I could talk to and I could get to say yes. And it really didn't matter what kind of business that they ran. I was just going to networking events and helping the people in front of me. And to a degree, I think that there's some validity in doing that because if you only have a certain type of people in front of you and you're very selective in the type of people that you're working with, you're going to be turning down a lot of business. And I didn't feel like I was in a place where I could be selective when I was just starting out with my own company. So I was just basically taking whatever business came along. And as things progressed, and as I developed a keener sense of who I wanted to go after, I thought to myself, I'm going to go after coaches because coaches have a bigger return on their investment in their marketing because um, the the lifetime value of that client would be a lot more than say e-commerce or something for the most part because a lot of things a lot of products that MLM people do they're not that expensive. They're not in the thousands range. Whereas a coach, one client could be in the thousands range. So that's what I was thinking, that their return on their investment would be higher. And as such, they would be more inclined to pay for marketing. So I was going along on this path for a while. And as I was trying to niche down, I was thinking about, certain types of coaches like spiritual coaches, life coaches, uh, females, uh, older females. So, I was trying to niche down into every little detail of the age range and, um, demographics and psychographics of what this ideal person would be. So I was focusing for a long time on only reaching out to people that would fit that criteria, particularly women. And I recently had a boom in business and things shifted and changed. And then all of a sudden I realized that I had a majority of my clients were men. Not only that, but I was having a much better experience uh, working with men than women. So even though my ideal avatar was women only, I ended up getting a lot of male clients. And this was just through the progression of, referrals and chance meetings, I guess you could say. But, things being the way they were, that's what happened. And it's kind of tipped the scales to the more men than women. And I've realized, and maybe this is another one of those generalizations that's not true, but in my experience, uh, is a lot easier to work with men than women. Men seem to be less demanding and, um, for the most part, more easygoing. And I think that I might have been resisting working with men initially because I had some bad experiences with men in my past. Um, being in a abusive relationship and escaping from that, and having some male bosses that were very controlling. So maybe the combination kind of got me to thinking that I didn't want to work with men because they're more intimidating, they're more controlling, they're more demanding. And this didn't end up being true. So now, I, once again, my avatar has shifted tremendously. So your ideal avatar is kind of this evolving thing, and they'll evolve as you evolve as a business owner. Um, if I were to narrow down on just one individual avatar, it would be a health coach or something like that. So naturopath, that kind of thing. So that is where I'm at right now, but it might change again in the near future because I'll have more experience with that type of client, and I'll either have bad experiences or good experiences, and those will shape my future decisions on who I want to work with. So that's why I'm saying it's ever evolving. And so I'm sharing all of this with you to kind of give you a grander view of this whole idea of the ideal client. Is there an ideal client? I don't know. Because every time I thought that I had the ideal client, uh, talking the talk and walking the walk are two different things. So my experiences with these clients whom I thought at the time could be my ideal client, that concept would change depending on the relationship that we were able to build, um, our interactions, the whole experience, and the results. These are all factors. So as you go along throughout your entrepreneurial journey, your concept of your ideal client is going to change. So I just wanted to challenge that question of who is your ideal client, because they're kind of this elusive, ethereal, non-existent thing that we're all striving for. And maybe y'all never have an ideal client. Then again, you could say that your experiences and your relationships with other people is a reflection of you yourself. So if you don't find that ideal client, maybe you need to look inward instead of outward. That's why I have taken on personal growth and personal development as a lifelong path, because I'm striving to be the ideal person. As I become an ideal person, then I'm going to have ideal clients, or the likelihood of having ideal clients is going to increase. I also wanted to challenge this question because I know that this is a sticking point for a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs, coaches. Like, who do I want to serve? And maybe you do have the very clear idea in your head of who you want to serve. And if you do, more power to you. But if you don't let that stop you from moving forward. And no matter who that ideal client is, always be willing to have an exception to the rule. If serendipity dictates that you're going to interact with somebody who you end up having as your client, don't fight that just because they're not within that little scope. The point of having that scope is because you're, how can I say this? Hmm. Okay, if you're going hunting, you're gonna scan your environment and look for the thing that you're hunting for, right? Let's say you're hunting for a deer. So you're gonna scan and look for that deer. And when you see it, you're gonna have a, a gun that's pointing right at it. Because the whole point of having a target audience or a target market is that you have a target. So you have something that you're pointing at, that you're focused on. You don't see the deer over there and then shoot over there. And you don't want to just your gun doesn't just spray out in a firework display. It just shoots in one direction. So now um, that focal point is a way for you to connect, make that connection, right? Make that connection with that deer, or make that connection with that ideal avatar. Because if you don't have any focal point, you can't focus on where you're looking, you can't hone in on one little area. So the more important overarching strategy behind having your ideal client is that you have a focal point, because you can't achieve anything without a focal point. I mean, I'm sorry if the whole hunting analogy triggers you. Um, it's simply an example. I hope that doesn't bother you too much that I used that analogy, but I hope that I'm getting this point across that if you are speaking outward to nobody, then you're not really going to attract anybody. You have to hone in on this one little tiny area. And then once you have that, then maybe you have to adjust it to over here or down here or over here. Or maybe, you know, to continue the analogy, maybe that deer runs off in that direction. So now you have to pan over to keep that in your range, right? So think of it that way. Think of it as you can even think of it as a starting point. You want to focus in on a starting point because, like I said, I've had many iterations of my ideal avatar. So it doesn't have to be fixed. Your ideal avatar does not have to be a fixed notion. It can be an ever-changing, ever-evolving thing. So I'm hoping that this helps you get unstuck from, oh, what is my ideal avatar? You know, once I select my ideal avatar, I can never deviate from that concept. Be willing to admit that maybe you picked the wrong ideal avatar and you have to shift and adjust. I believe that one of the most important factors in whether you fail or succeed in your business is your willingness and your ability to adapt. So don't be afraid to adapt. Don't be afraid to evolve. Don't be afraid to change your mind. Don't be afraid to do a 180. you know, just to get it right. There's going to be some fine tuning involved. My dad, one more analogy here. Okay. My dad is a musician and for a while he was tuning pianos for a living. And the way you tune a piano is you have like this little tool that adjusts the string for the individual key. So you have the string, right? And you have to adjust that just right so that string resonates a certain frequency. And it could be a little bit off one way or another. So you have to go in there and just very gently shift it one way or another to try to get that frequency just right. And then you have a tuned piano. Before the piano is tuned, you might not be able to even listen to it because there's so much discord and dissonance that it's horrific to listen to. But then once you have all those keys tuned, then it creates this beautiful sound. So consider that creating your definition of your ideal avatar or your ideal client is like tuning a piano. You have to dial in every single one of these frequencies until it all sounds perfect together. You know, you have all of these different characteristics of who you're seeking, who you're focusing in on. And then once all of those different keys, all those characteristics, all of those everything about that person is dialed in, you're going to resonate with that person and they're going to resonate with you because it is a two-way street. you know, you might want to fire a client just as much as a client might want to fire you. So it's a two-way street. You have to be in resonance with each other. And then when you are, that's when the magic happens. That's when the synergy happens. And together, you and your client are going to be able to create and change and progress and have all these wonderful results from that connection that you've made with them, that from that relationship you've made with them. So this was really long-winded, and I hope that I hope that some of it stuck and some of it resonated with you. So thank you so much for watching, and do yourself a favor and take some time today or sometime this week if you can't do it right now, and just sit down and write down what are all of those characteristics about who you would consider your ideal avatar. Thanks so much for watching and have a great day.